Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 280th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the MSP studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Cameron. I got a new car this week.
Let's go.
I wouldn't wish the car buying process on my worst enemy.
No.
But we have a new car. That's all that matters.
Yeah? What'd you go with?
We bought a Subaru Outback.
Love a Subaru.
I'm not a big outdoorsy guy, but yeah, I still like a Subaru.
It makes you, does driving it make you want to hit the trails?
Yeah.
Throw the kayak on
Just
top?
see what I can do, yeah.
Yeah.
Throw the kayak on top, yeah.
Makes sense. Did you have to battle it out in the finance department?
Oh, yeah, you gotta hold your own a little bit.
Yeah.
Or else they'll take you for everything you're worth.
You're a really good negotiator. I know that from our previous business dealings.
That's what I found out, yeah. All those fantasy football trades.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to think if I've done anything interesting. Mostly watching kids movies. Watched the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Not bad.
Not bad.
Have you seen it?
I have.
Oh, yeah. It's a nice little nostalgia hit.
Yeah.
And looks gorgeous. So can't complain too much for a kids movie. Actually, a little violent, honestly. It probably Olivia not old enough for it, technically, because just a lot of fighting. So
they're just always mad at each other.
yeah, she's wanting to punch everything now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. What are we going to talk about on the podcast this week? We're going to talk about Missouri's terrible, awful basketball team for a little bit, see if we can maybe get to the bottom of what's going on there. And we are going to continue our football season recap. We'll be talking about the second half of the season and any news that we can think of along the way. But we will start it off with basketball. It's not looking good, Kyle. Missouri falls to 8-11 on the season, 0-6 in SEC play. I forgot to ask people to subscribe. Before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Leave us a review wherever you listen to us, and you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Kyle, 0-6 in SEC play, another 0-2 week. It's not looking good. Season's over. What are we? It's been a while since we've been this far out of anything.
Yeah, I mean,
this early.
Yeah, it really feels like there's nothing to play for this season. We've talked about getting the young guys some run and kind of just getting them some game experience and that kind of stuff. I think that's really that's probably what you're focused on. And Dennis Gates would probably never tell you that. And honestly, he hasn't really been playing the guys like that. Like with that in mind, I think we have seen the young guys play a little bit more in the last just couple of games here. But
the way you can kind of pull another year of eligibility out of nowhere, maybe he's thinking, we're going to apply for some waivers this offseason.
I hope not.
I know.
Yeah, it does feel like Dennis Gates is a different man on the sidelines a little bit. At least the past month or so, like he's a little bit more animated. He's been visibly angry with the refs and sometimes even the players and stuff. So I think he's frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, not winning games, obviously you don't want this to happen, but the result is I think everybody's going to feel the pressure a little bit. The players are going to feel it. The coach is probably trying to absorb as much of that as he can from the players.
Yeah, it's like you want to play the young guys for next year, but what are you going to do? Go winless in SEC play?
Exactly.
No coach wants to do that. Nobody wants to watch that happen.
Knowing that you're probably going to have to bring in 3 or 4 starter level transfers this offseason. And Missouri lost to Florida, but Tamar Bates set a Mizzou SEC record with 36 points in that game. But they lost to Florida 79-67. Bates, 12 of 17 from 2. The rest of the team, 8 for 20.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tamar Bates proved in this game that he's probably one of the most talented players on the team, if not the most talented. And maybe he should just start trying to take over games a little bit more often because, he's clearly more athletically gifted than really anybody else on the team. He's long, he can shoot, and he can kind of get in the lane better than anyone else has been doing.
He is quietly putting together a 50-40-90 season. He's shooting 50% from the field, 40% from three, 90% from the free throw line. We talked about that like 2 years ago, or the offseason when Isaiah Mosley transferred to Mizzou because he had just put up that kind of season at Missouri State. What a weird time to like have that kind of season and it not really mean a whole lot.
It feels pretty hollow.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really feel like it's happened watching the games. But he scored half of our points against Florida.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating because it feels like what we're seeing with him is that offensive efficiency bump in Dennis Gates' system that we saw from Kobe Brown. We're seeing something like that with him at this point, and we saw that a little bit with East earlier in the season. He's still playing well, but I don't know. It's like every single player on this roster is needing to do. It's like we have a starting five of guys who would all be really good sixth men, and then that's just, I don't know. We don't have that number one guy, I feel like. I mean, Tamar Bates, his usage is not incredibly high. His efficiency off the charts. So that's a perfect like 3-and-D wing like we thought we were going to get. But it's not your high usage go-to guy. I mean, I just don't think that that's necessarily his game. It could be next season. Missouri also lost to Texas A&M 63-57. And I just feel like the conversation now has to be, how do we not let this happen next year? You and I, Kyle, how do we make sure this doesn't happen next year?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this was... I mean, it was almost like this... like a tease, because we were within range really this whole game, and we started off hot. We were in the lead in the first half, and but Missouri just got killed in the free throw game, like we do really every game. But it felt especially painful in this game just because we lost by 5 points, and it was really kind of at arm's length the entire time.
Free throw attempts: Missouri attempted 10, Texas A&M attempted 37.
Yeah, so I mean that just to me that's like the skeleton key to fix what's happening going forward. And maybe these players are just incapable of drawing fouls. We've talked about it really almost every week. The guards are undersized, blah blah blah. Yeah. But I mean, this just has to be, in my opinion, what Dennis Gates just makes the main focus going forward. How do we get to the free throw line? Because we can't have a minus 27 free throw differential and expect to beat literally anyone. Right. Especially when we're not shooting that well from the field as it is. Yeah. And when we're getting to the free throw line, we're shooting really well. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thinking back to last year, and I feel like what you would hear the commentators say so often is like, we were talking about Isaiah Mosley, talking about DeAndre Golston, Kobe Brown. These were guys that were all very good in one-on-one situations. You didn't even need a mismatch. They could just go to work on their defender and get themselves open for a shot, or put their defender in a situation where they're either going to give up an open shot or foul. Yeah. And this squad this year has approximately 0 guys who can just take their man in a one-on-one situation. Sean East can get those mismatches where he's posting up a smaller guard and he's got his up and under moves and pivot foot moves that look really good. Yeah. But he's got his get into the lane and then pick up the dribble and look to pass move also. Yes. And with like what we always talk about with the guards getting in there and not being able to do anything, the defenders don't have to foul. Yeah. They can just play good defense and force our guards into these weird fall away floaters and stuff. Yeah. And like, to Sean East's credit, he knows teams are going to try to run him off the 3-point line, and he's going to have to score in the paint with a floater or something, and he's good at it. But I don't know. It just like you see Carlero Martin just providing nothing offensively.
And like you would think, okay, against Texas A&M, 29 minutes, 0 points, 0 for 2 from the field. Well, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, but then also 5 turnovers.
Yeah, he'll have like one savvy pass, and coach is like, "Oh yeah, this is an experienced player right here."
Yeah,
yeah. I think just to put a bow on the free throw thing. I mean, I was coming into the game against A&M. Missouri had attempted 301 free throws this season. That's dead last in the SEC. In 13th place was Kentucky, who had attempted 345. So that's 44 more free throws than Missouri. It was the second to last. And most of the teams were like in the 400s. And at this point, you can't keep going like that where you're just not drawing fouls. And you better be shooting lights out from three if you're going to do that. And we definitely aren't.
Speaking of Kentucky for a second, it seems really unfair that Kentucky is like, already has 12 wins on the season. They're 3-1 in conference play, and then middle of January they debut a 7'2", just like NBA player basically, who's throwing behind the back passes, making threes,
immediately
blocking shots. Yeah, just comes in mid-season and starts dominating. Big Z, they call him. So don't look forward to playing against him. But yeah, so Kentucky just doing everything right, apparently. They've figured out a way to incorporate their freshmen off the bench perfectly. Like Coach Cal, he's got to figure it out, I think.
Unless they're playing against South Carolina.
True. South Carolina, good, apparently.
Hey, we get to play them again.
Yeah. But honestly, like looking at the roster here, like Sean East, Nick Honor, Noah Carter, Connor Vanover, and Caleb Grill. We'll get Caleb Grill back at some point, but offensively, he was still only shooting like 29% from three. I think he's, bringing the effort defensively and knows what coach wants from him there, but I don't think we can, and he'll have a game or two probably where he lights it up, but I don't think he's the guy that fixes the offense when he comes back.
No, I think Tamar Bates has to be the go-to guy at this point. He probably isn't really built for that, but I think he's probably the most likely candidate to be that, like, put the team on his back and just start driving to the bucket and see what happens kind of player. He did that against Florida. He did it well. And, he can shoot from three a little bit. That's probably still not his strength, but I don't know, man. Just like you said, we have a team full of role players and guys that can fill roles really well, but, they're expected. They're right now. They're being expected to play a role that they can't fill consistently.
Right. So I'm already thinking about next year. I'm thinking about this offseason a little bit because it is a little bit worrisome, and I'm seeing people on Twitter, on the internet, potentially overreacting and starting to turn on Coach Gates a little bit, which that's always going to happen when you start 0-6 in SEC play. But I don't know, kind of like comparing Coach Gates at Mizzou so far to Drink. Like, we gave Coach Drinkwitz a fairly long leash to get things going after just 500 seasons. It was like, okay, we need to get something going. But obviously, he was recruiting at a new level that Missouri hadn't seen in a while. And then it all came to fruition in this past season. Well, Coach Gates comes out and wins an NCAA tournament game in year one, and also has the recruiting class coming in that, he's making strides there.
Sends 2 players to the NBA who were not on the radar whatsoever before the season.
Exactly. And so I feel like worst case scenario in my mind, how I'm evaluating these 2 seasons, I'm basically in my head combining them into the equivalent of 2 middling 500 seasons.
Yeah, I think the problem is, in football, you play 12 games and once a week, and the season's over in a blink. And then in basketball, we're playing twice a week. We're losing twice a week.
Yeah.
And every single time we lose, there's got to be a whole commentary started online, and all the takes just have to happen over and over and over. So it's happening more repeatedly. But yeah, and I mean that's on Twitter. There's no room for nuance, and it's very easy to be very dramatic or appear like you're being dramatic and maybe you aren't. But
True.
I don't know that, I'm definitely not panicking on Dennis Gates. I think there's a way that you can criticize or maybe not understand fully some of the rotations or the free throw discrepancy like we talked about and still not be hitting like fire Dennis Gates button.
Yeah.
And I think we do have to just have some hope that he knows what's going on and he's going to get some more talent in here and things will be better.
So I'm a little bit worried though about, and it's a little bit too early maybe to be thinking this way, but what are you going to do when you can't win games? This offseason, I feel like we're already going to lose those 5 seniors, East, Honor, Carter, Vanover, Grill, out of eligibility. So it was always going to look like somewhat of a new team next year. A lot of freshmen coming in.
It's a lot of usage.
Yes.
That's graduating.
Exactly. And so we got the news last week about John Tanjay getting another year because of a medical red shirt. But I'm looking down at this list of guys who are in line to return, and I'm just starting to get a little bit nervous because what does John Tanjay look like a year from now, having not played very much at all in any sort of meaningful basketball since last season, basically. Bates returns, but I mean, sometimes it feels like he and Coach Gates are not on the same page entirely. That's reading a lot into that, thinking that would be something that he would leave over, but I don't know. Just go with me here for a sec.
I'm going.
JCM, not getting much out of him, but he's got another year of eligibility. So what does that look like? Kurt Lewis, JUCO guy coming in, hasn't done much. He has another year of eligibility. I feel like any of those older players with eligibility could be gone this offseason.
Sure.
Bates would hurt the worst, definitely. And he's probably the one that the rest of the season I'm going to be just watching. Is he getting the minutes? Does he have a green light the rest of the way? If there comes a point where he's sitting or is not as involved in the offense, I think that's going to be a red flag as far as maybe him moving on. But this team, this record is going to look so bad by the end of the season that we're not going to be in a position to be upset when any of these guys don't come back next year.
Yeah, I think that's just basically the conclusion we're going to have to come to is this team is not going to be good. We already know that. And there's going to be some carnage at the end of the year, whether it's guys graduating, whether it's guys transferring up or down maybe. Probably not a lot of transferring up going on, but I think we're going to actually probably be happy whenever this roster is turning over.
Yeah.
And even if that means losing a couple of guys that could be productive potentially next year, I think we're going to be happy just to get a fresh look at the roster next year.
And that's a win-win take by us because that's just a classic prove me wrong situation.
That's exactly what's going to happen too.
All these guys come back and then go to the NCAA tournament. So we talked about a few of those guys. Aiden Shaw is a guy that I don't see going anywhere.
Yeah.
I think he's bought in and not worried. Now, the freshmen, we've got Anthony Robinson, Jordan Butler, and Trent Pierce. And I feel like their situations are all a little bit different. I feel like Butler, you just got to kind of ride it out. You're a freshman being asked to do a little bit too much, but I don't think he's being put out there in a way that's going to like ruin his career or anything.
Right. Oh, to back up real quick, just about Aiden Shaw.
Yeah.
I think he'll be on the team. I think the next thing becomes, will he make an impact? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yes, the freshman. Yeah, I mean, Burns has honestly played pretty well.
Butler.
You
got ahead of yourself to the recruiting class.
Here we are. Butler has played pretty well the last couple of games. You know, I think he's shown some things for a guy that's 7 feet tall or however tall he is. He maybe took a couple of bad shots in the most pivotal possession of the game against A&M.
Yes.
But, I think that's just going to happen, especially with a team that hasn't won any games. Who cares?
Yeah.
Just let the young guys have that moment.
He was open.
And learn from it. He was open. He's had some nice drives and stuff. He's proven that, he's got some good moves and stuff. So, yeah, he's a guy that I think you probably want to hold on to.
Mm-hmm. Trent Pierce. Now, Trent Pierce and Ant are, I think, kind of opposite stories for me, in my head at least. I feel like they both have shown, like both of their ceilings, I feel like are future NBA player. And Robinson has enough, I think, like his measurables plus he's flashed a few times early in the season, that my concern about him looking at the offseason is that teams are going to be snooping around trying to get him to transfer, to someplace that we'd view as like a competitor or like an up-and-coming team that's looking for some point guard depth.
Yeah. I want to make you feel better, Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
If he wants to play at Missouri, I think he's going to be. I think that will happen. There's going to be 1,000 people in the transfer portal.
True.
I personally don't think and I think coaches are looking for stats. They're looking for who made an impact on the stat sheet, who's scoring and 15 points a game, that kind of stuff. And he has shown some flashes, but I don't know that he's shown enough to like garner the attention of the bigger teams that want to come calling. I could totally be wrong. But
the way I'm imagining it is like, if a coach out there is interested in him, I feel like there's a sales pitch that's like, listen, this is an NBA comp we have for you. Mm-hmm. Come here, and they're going to be selling him on it a little bit.
Maybe so teams that he had high school relationships with, potentially.
Come here for 1 year. We're going to let you run the show, put up your stats, and then go to the NBA. That's what I think teams could be selling him on this offseason, is like, come here for a year and go pro.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there will be enough buzz, and I'm maybe just getting too caught up in his measurables, but
it just feels like he's had some opportunities to bury some threes and hasn't quite. What's he shooting from three?
Let me look it up.
Because I hope they hold on to him. He's definitely shown some flashes.
5 of 26 on the year. That's good for 19%. And you're right. Looking at his game log here, after the Wichita State game, December 3rd, he goes a little stretch of not playing a ton. He's injured, has to sit out the Kentucky game. And then the last 4 games, he's averaging about 14 minutes per game, 13 minutes per game. I don't know.
I think you have to just keep giving him minutes and see what he can do. And if he starts performing really well and the big boys come calling, then I don't know. I guess you got to fight that battle after the season, but we'll see.
Yeah, I guess, my concern is that early season, the flashes early on could have given him an idea of like, oh yeah, I can do this, and take on the challenge of trying to transfer up.
Yeah.
Trent Pierce, I feel like he's in a pretty opposite situation where he still has that ceiling, but has shown even less.
Right.
And
he's a guy that's like not afraid to shoot at all either.
Yeah.
Gets in there and just starts firing away. And honestly, I'm fine with it. Like at this point, I feel like what I would find most entertaining about a Missouri basketball game is Anthony Robinson, Trent Pierce. Show me what you can do. Like, give us some hope here.
Yeah. Yeah, and watching the last 2 games, how many times it's so painful when Missouri's on offense, you see them work the ball around to get absolutely no advantage on the possession.
Yeah, what's the end goal?
The defense is not even a little bit like out of place after Missouri has worked through their, passing the ball around.
Which Missouri definitely doesn't do when they're on defense.
Right.
Like they're always like chasing the ball and
scrambling
stuff.
around. Yeah. And like last game against Texas A&M, there were multiple possessions where JCM is just like pivoting at the top of the key, looking for somebody to pass it to.
Yeah, which he also missed a pretty big shot in a pivotal moment against A&M as well. Trent Pierce, I think I hope they're patient with him, and they may not be in a position where they can be. I don't know. They might be just trying to hit the transfer portal as hard as they can, but hopefully he's a guy that sticks around because if they give him a shot, I think that I'm still pretty high on him. And I think he could be really good.
I agree with you. Yeah. And you can't coach, 6'11" with a shooting touch.
Yeah.
And now there are reinforcements coming already next year.
Hear me out real quick.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Kurt Lewis.
Yeah, okay.
He gets in there and actually gets to the basket.
Yeah, okay.
Very, very limited action, not the savior of the team or anything like that, but I wouldn't mind giving him some more opportunities. He's kind of a spark, honestly, when he gets in there. He's just fearless. He gets to the basket and nobody else is really doing that.
I could see that.
Probably not shooting from three very well, but nobody else is either.
Yeah, 22% from three, 47% from two. Just no usage whatsoever, though.
Yeah.
So very small sample size. Yeah. Somebody needs to put the ball in the basket. But it was as the Texas A&M game is happening, I see a tweet come across my feed of future Missouri Tiger, Anor Boateng, throwing down an off the backboard alley-oop in a game. And
that was nasty.
For a moment, all my problems disappeared.
5-star.
Yeah.
Anor Boateng.
Yeah. From the state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
Coming home. And so we do have this recruiting class: Boateng, Peyton Marshall, Marcus Allen, Trent Burns, T.O. Barrett, ready to come in, reinforcements on their way, whatever they can get in the transfer portal, whichever of these guys return that have eligibility. I mean, that's what we're looking at for next year.
That's pretty much all you can think about at this point, is just that fresh start of those 5 guys coming in, and whoever they can bring in the transfer portal. There will be shooters in the portal, and that's got to be the priority, because it might be a sin to even say this out loud.
I'll judge you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Maybe I need it, but the recruiting class is great.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 in the country. All these guys are super talented. They have great measurables. I am a little afraid, though, that still none of these guys can shoot very well. And they have great high school highlights, and, some definitely more than others. But even the
great
wing
measurables, yeah,
even the wing players, I'm not sold that they can shoot super well at the college level. And obviously, I hope that I'm just dead wrong.
Well, I mean, historically, freshmen don't come in and shoot lights out from 3 anyway. But I feel like there's going to be room for Boateng to do his thing, and you got to go get a shooter in the portal.
Yeah.
There's
really no reason for me even to be worrying about that at this point, because it's our only hope that those guys are good.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing in the back of my mind, that's my very mild concern.
Yeah.
And you just go get shooting in the portal.
Yeah. So we've basically done one of those things where this is year 0.
Yeah.
This is the rebuild year, and it needs to, and almost can only go up from here.
Yeah.
Missouri somehow beat Pittsburgh earlier in the season.
Yeah. It's going to be a bumpy road, but sometimes, assuming things get better, these can be kind of rewarding situations where you kind of see it through and rebuild the roster how you want to build it.
And as far as we can tell, no players are quitting on this team. No players are quitting on this coaching staff. They're still in these games for a long time.
Yep, they're playing hard.
Yeah.
Just ball is just not going in.
I don't know how much longer I personally could keep doing it. I'm okay with watching them on TV, though. That much I can do.
Yeah.
Kyle, what if I told you there's a really good opportunity to split this week? There's 2 games on the schedule, and I think Missouri's got a good chance of winning one of them.
I've heard that before.
Next up, at South Carolina. Already lost to them at home, so maybe that's out of the question. So forget about that one. But then
that's a loss.
Then home game against Arkansas.
Okay. I might be buying the split.
Is the only other SEC team who has just kind of fallen on their faces a little bit compared to preseason expectations. Mm-hmm. Them so way more than Missouri.
Yeah.
Because Missouri actually didn't have all that many preseason expectations outside of fans, basically. Tell you a little bit about Arkansas. They are 10-8 on the season. Conference record of 1-4. They lost to Auburn, Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina, but they beat Texas A&M. On KenPom, they're ranked 100th, 95th on offense, 107th on defense. So like basically just a little bit better than Missouri on all of those numbers. Leading scorer, Tremont Mark, almost 18 points per game. He transferred from Houston. And they have second leading scorer, Temple transfer Khalif Battle. Mark had 35 in their win over A&M. He can fill it up. They also have a guy named Trayvon Brazil.
Yeah, what's he up to?
He started all 18 games for them this year.
And that's why they're bad.
Let's see. What is he up to? Shooting 35% from 3, 55% from 2, getting to the free throw line, blocking some shots, rebounding the ball a little bit. Nothing crazy, but just solid all around, honestly. A couple other just like random names. This season of college basketball is just like names from everywhere. They have senior Chandler Lawson. He was from Memphis, had a Mizzou offer forever ago. Was at Memphis for 2 years, or was at Oregon for 2 years, Memphis for 2 years. Now he's at Arkansas. And then a guy we watched in the Tournament of Champions last year, Layden Blocker. He's a freshman on this Arkansas team.
Just a hodgepodge.
Yeah, they're not great, but feels like they are better than Missouri. But this game's at home, and you got to get up for it if you're Mizzou. Like this might be.
This is the Saturday game?
Let me double check. No, this is next Wednesday. So I don't know. It feels like if that one goes poorly, because one thing I talked about last week was you're playing A&M in Florida, and they're like in the bottom half of the SEC standings right now. They're trying to make their move to not be in the bottom 4. Now it's Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Arkansas sitting there in the bottom 4. Missouri showed this past week that they belong in the bottom 4.
Yeah.
Now it's like, you got to beat Arkansas and Vanderbilt, maybe Ole Miss later.
Yeah, they've had plenty of chances to beat the teams that should be like in the same area as them on the standings. So this has got to be the one at this point. At least just beat Trayvon Brazil and Arkansas, and then we can just move on.
Yeah, Vanderbilt is still kind of another level. They're 186 in KenPom, which is kind of insane. But they're the only other team without a SEC win so far. I'd really like to see Missouri get theirs this week. So we're both predicting a win over Arkansas.
Absolutely.
Never not doing that. So we can shift gears here to football and continue our season recap. Should we talk defensive coordinator first?
Not much to talk about.
No. Although Jim Harbaugh,
breaking news to us 30 minutes ago,
is going to be the next coach of the Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers.
You didn't want to try to say where they were from.
I literally, one time I thought they were in Las Vegas. The Raiders are in Vegas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that means that our little meme of what's his name?
Yeah.
Jim Kelly.
Brian Kelly.
Jim Kelly. Brian Kelly getting the Michigan job is still alive, but it seems unlikely. But
says who? Let's get it going. Brian Kelly to Michigan.
Manifest it.
Yeah, that'd be incredible.
But that means Jesse Minter might be looking for a job as well.
Yeah.
The current defensive coordinator at Michigan, which from the get-go was kind of like a guy, pipe dream maybe, but was a guy we talked about when the job became available. So that's seemingly maybe still alive potentially. Yeah,
it feels like a long shot, but if I want to just dream for a moment as a Mizzou fan, thinking about like an 11-win season and then you lose your defensive coordinator, but actually it's a blessing because you upgrade. Could that happen to us?
I mean, at this point, like I really wonder what's going on because we've been looking for a defensive coordinator for 2-3 weeks at this point.
Feels like a long time.
It feels like a long time. Is it possible that Coach Drinkwitz was waiting on this very thing to happen?
I mean, if literally was waiting on a Jim Harbaugh decision, that means that they think they can do something here. So
yeah, we'll see.
That'd be nice, but
yeah, I mean, there's been some names pop up here and there, but like there really just hasn't really been anything concrete there's really, who knows what's going on.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, it feels like even like the public rumor mills have been quiet on Mizzou for a little bit. So back to the season recap. Last week we ended with the LSU game. So we are picking up with a Missouri Tiger team that is 5-1, coming off of a crushing loss to LSU. And at this point in the season, the offense has won everybody over, taken everybody by surprise to some extent. Brady Cook's playing really well. Luther Burden's putting up stats. But we talked about last week the split between the running backs and how just now at the LSU game, Cody Schrader is commanding all of the running back touches, basically. Yeah. And that brings us to a road matchup with Kentucky. And
historically cursed matchup.
Yes, this was a little bit of a worrisome one. I think preseason, I had this as a loss.
Did we feel good going into it? I honestly can't remember.
Well, yeah, because Kentucky's offense had not done a whole lot yet.
Yeah.
Because that was the Devin Leary revenge game.
Yeah. They had Ray Davis that had been a really good running back, though.
Yes. He'd been going crazy, but Leary didn't look like too scary. And however, they jump out to a 14-0 start, and it just felt like, well, this is the one where everything goes terribly.
Yeah, and we had talked about just game script wise that getting down to Kentucky would be the worst possible thing because they can just keep running. And at that point, I don't know that we were sure that Missouri was built to have to build a comeback through the air, but they proved us wrong, man. That was definitely just felt like something we hadn't seen in a while. Like, oh, they broke the script.
Yes, and yeah, we hadn't. I mean, somebody could maybe point out an example of this happening, something close to this, but I don't think we had seen a comeback like this. I mean, on the road.
Yeah, just get punched in the mouth immediately in an SEC matchup.
And the entire season changed on the fake punt pass.
I think you're right, genuinely.
That was such
turning point.
Yeah. Yeah. And
he just chucked it,
What a call. What a play.
Yeah. I was watching the highlight of that earlier today, and it was not a situation where Luke Bauer was like, I'm going to kind of scan the environment or wait for him to get open. It was truly like when he caught the ball, he just immediately went into just chuck it downfield mode.
Throw it to a spot and hope your guy is there.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And then it just ended up being like a classic game.
Yeah,
Missouri wins it 38-21.
Yeah, I honestly feel like Kentucky was surprised that Missouri bounced back the way they did. And, I mean, they ended up winning by like 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just such a fun game. And the way it went from dire to a party was fantastic.
I think that's when I truly realized this team is really good. Yeah. And obviously, they're not world beaters, but they were a top 25 team. Mm-hmm. Their strengths were our weaknesses. And to come back like we did, I think that was what made me realize, okay, we are 6-1, and I think that we're legit.
And that's an example that we will have more of as the season progresses, of the offense going up against a tough defense, but doing what they need to do to get out of there with the win.
Yeah.
And the defense really stepping up, and that'll be a trend for the rest of the season here, continuing into the South Carolina game that Missouri won 34-12. And we remember the slogan for the game, we find out afterwards, is Rattle Rattler, and they did that to perfection. And this was a South Carolina offense that could beat you. And they have some talent, and Missouri's defense holds them to 12 points. Cody Schrader runs the ball 26 times for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. And again, in the second half, it's a party.
Yeah. The game against South Carolina, at least in the first half, they definitely took their foot off the pedal in the second half because they didn't need to keep scoring. Yeah. But the first half against South Carolina felt like what I thought the game against South Dakota was going to feel like earlier in the year, where it was like their defense was Swiss cheese and Missouri was doing anything they wanted to do.
Yeah, it was 24-3 at halftime. And so we lose to LSU, but you get back above 500 in conference play after you beat South Carolina. And that's a game where, like, South Carolina fans preseason, they think that they are the dark horse to do what Missouri did this season. And there's always teams like that. I mean, we were talking about with basketball, you got to beat the teams that are going to be finish around you in the conference standings. And to take South Carolina, who thought they were going to be playing that type of ball, and beat them 34-12, just like so satisfying.
Yeah.
But that brings us to a road matchup with number 2 Georgia. And this was like halftime of South Carolina. Everybody's already thinking about Georgia and what a big game this could be, and like a potential for a program-changing win, basically, considering the fact that this is the last year of divisions and you don't have a SEC East loss yet. Everything's still in front of you. But for the second year in a row, Missouri falls just short against Georgia.
I think we knew Georgia was like not the team they have been the last 2 years too. Obviously still one of the best teams in college football.
Top 4, you say?
Top 4. But still, I think we knew their limitations, and I think we knew how we could beat them. Mm-hmm. And it really almost happened. And, Missouri played really well. Some horrible miscues down the stretch. But Missouri played probably Georgia as good as anybody did the whole year.
Yeah, 10-10 at halftime, and just one half of football to put it away. Couldn't quite do it. Brady Cook had the back-breaking interception,
driving to take the lead potentially.
Yeah, down 6 in the fourth quarter, and yeah, that's a play that does not bring back good memories. But yeah, just to be that close, and to have that was the moment. Like even in a loss, to have all of the fan base's ideas about what this season could be solidified, basically. I don't know. It kind of changed the way I thought about the rest of the season from like, well, let's just give it our best shot every game to like, oh, we're supposed to win the rest of these games on the schedule.
Definitely kind of went from like happy to be here to the expectation that we're going to win out.
Right. And the very next game on the schedule is, I think Missouri was 14th in the polls or in the playoff rankings, playing at home against number 13 Tennessee. And just like I was talking about with South Carolina, Tennessee thinks they're in the hunt for the SEC East championship.
Right.
And this is like, okay, this is it. One of these teams is going to go on to win 11 games, most likely. The other one could just kind of fall into the middle of the pack and not be heard from again.
Yeah.
And Missouri wins 36-7.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems silly looking back, but coming into the game, I think we were a little bit nervous about this matchup, and obviously Tennessee quarterback, whose name I can't think of off the top of my head,
Milton.
Milton is not Jaden Daniels, but we had kind of just gotten diced up by a mobile quarterback, an athletic quarterback who can run and throw, and he kind of presented that challenge that I thought could give Missouri trouble, and obviously didn't at all.
Right.
And Missouri hasn't played Tennessee super well the last few years, so this whole season was almost just like exercising demons a little bit.
Yes, redemption,
and just doing things that they just historically haven't done in the last 5-10 years or whatever.
Yeah, and that was the Cody Schrader. If there was ever going to be a Cody Schrader Heisman campaign, this was the peak of it.
Yeah.
205 yards rushing, another 116 yards receiving, and Brady Cook with 275. The defense only holding Tennessee to 7 points, just incredible. 2 fumble recoveries, Dalen Carnell with a pick 6. Everything just, I don't know. The gears were all turning. Everything was syncing up perfectly.
That was the most fun game of the season.
They stood on business also.
They did. They absolutely did.
Legendary moment.
They
right
let them
there.
know.
Yeah. Oh, man. What a fun game. This stretch here now coming to the end of the regular season, the defense is starting to deal with some injuries. Chad Bailey not playing, Ennis Rakestraw in and out of the lineup. Tyron Hopper, I think he plays against Florida, but not against Arkansas. So going into the Florida game, the defense is a little banged up. but just put together an incredible performance against Tennessee. And Florida is just kind of a sneaky team that had been playing well at times, but couldn't really put it together. We knew they had a solid quarterback who could make things happen. And it all came down to 4th and 17. And another, there's maybe, I've seen people doing like top 5 moments of the season, and it does really feel like there's like maybe 4 or 5 standout. Like you think of Mevis's kick, you think of the fake punt and against Kentucky, and I think of this 4th and 17 against Florida.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Honestly, did you really think they were going to convert that?
No,
You thought the game was
not.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
although, like, we have seen this Missouri team randomly make drives, like put together drives late in games in crunch time but just fall short. But we've seen, a random late throw to Theo Weiss to against LSU. We saw them kind of make this effort to get into field goal range. Against Georgia, we're making plays, but then making the back-breaking mistake.
Yeah.
And both of those times were Brady Cook interceptions. So it felt like, it has kind of felt like at times, as long as Brady Cook doesn't throw an interception, we can win these games.
Yeah, in some scenarios, it really felt like Brady Cook, and one of the biggest areas of improvement for him this season was kind of that clutch play where he just, honestly, whenever we have folded in the past, he kind of just was there making plays, and whenever I didn't think we'd be able to. Obviously, he fell short in some massive spots too, so he definitely wasn't perfect in that department, and we just talked about Georgia maybe being the biggest example of that. And there was some moments in LSU too, but and hopefully that's something he can continue to build on next season.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah,
that was probably one of the biggest areas of improvement for him from 2 seasons ago to this season.
Yeah, and for him as a junior to sort of have this defining moment where he makes the play against Florida, gets it to the guy, gets it to Luther Burden for the first down, and then they finish the game with a win. Doing that at home against Florida feels like, if you're like doing the storybook progression of Brady Cook's career, that sets you up to then as a senior be ready to make those kind of plays against the LSUs and Georgias of the world. Make that type of play on the road against a top tier opponent. Yeah,
and I'm glad we ended up actually pulling the game out too, because that 4th and 17 probably means nothing. We just forget about it if somehow Missouri doesn't pull off the win.
Yeah, but another classic game from this incredible season. And that leads us to the last game of the regular season at Arkansas. Arkansas having a very disappointing season. And, but still, it's like, okay, for the first time in a little while, Missouri comes into this game as the clear favorite, even on the road. And it's like setting us up for the embarrassment of losing at Arkansas when you have a special season going.
Yeah, I think, you'd be crazy to not have that in the back of your mind. This might be the worst possible time we could ever lose to Arkansas, because they would be ruining what we have going on.
Yeah,
but not even remotely a factor.
No, Missouri wins the game 48-14. Missouri's defense steps up, 13 tackles for loss total, and just another, just a walk in the park for the offense.
Yeah. And then just a beautiful 24 to 48 hours of Arkansas Twitter just melting down, and all the media people who are really actually just fans, giving all their sad takes and stuff. It was a tradition like none other.
Yes, and it really, I don't know, going into this kind of new iteration of the SEC, adding Oklahoma and Texas, feels like that's the time to kind of establish yourself in the pecking order to some extent.
Yeah.
And maybe that comes back to bite Missouri if we, suck the next couple of years. But that's not the reality that we're living in right now. We're living in the reality where Missouri won 11 games and showed that they are superior to South Carolina, Florida, Arkansas.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, perfect season to do something magical. It's the last season of the divisions, and that some of these teams that we've been playing every year, we won't see them for a while.
Right.
So we kind of get the last laugh with some of these teams that maybe we won't play for a couple of years. And Oklahoma and Texas are coming in thinking of Missouri as a pretty dangerous team.
And like a cherry on top, just like sending KJ Jefferson, out to the farm, basically. Just
send him out to pasture.
Yes, basically. End his career with the Hogs on a low note.
I think he transferred to UCF.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it's over.
Might as well.
Is that what you're trying to?
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, like one of maybe the best quarterback ever in the history of Arkansas or something. I don't know, probably. And we're just like, you know what, you're done. He was pretty banged up though.
Yeah, I think he got hurt.
Literally like got injured in the game.
Like the first drive or something.
Another 200-yard performance for Cody Schrader, 217 rushing yards.
Yeah, that just became the expectation down the stretch, which is just insane. The performances he was stacking.
And we would talk about earlier in the season, like in the fourth quarter, he has another level. Like he does not slow down. He does not show that he's tired. He doesn't show wear and tear. He multiple games this year had his longest rush of the game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
He was punching it in to, ice the game multiple times.
Yeah. Cameron, I was going to make this a trivia time, but it was just going to be too easy, and the transition here is just too beautiful.
Oh,
but,
okay.
You mentioned Missouri being superior in the fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any guess what that point differential looked like in the fourth quarter of their games in just the second half of the season? Like Kentucky through Ohio State. Here, let me give you the other quarters.
Okay.
Just in those games, first quarter differential in points, Missouri 37-27.
Okay.
Over their opponents. Second quarter 63-17. So they were really good in the second quarter of games for whatever reason. Third quarter 46-41.
Okay.
And the fourth quarter was their best.
Wow.
In point differential.
So they're like plus 60 in the fourth quarter?
Pretty close. 81-33.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So,
wow.
Which in 33, 14 of those 33 points that the opponent scored were in garbage time against Arkansas.
Right. They had not scored up until that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it just seemed like they were good when it mattered.
Yeah.
And Cody Schrader especially. Yeah, it was just somehow he would just get stronger as the game was going on.
Well, that's Coach Drinkwitz in the celebration of the bowl game.
Yeah.
Talking about fourth quarter. We're stronger, faster in the fourth quarter. They showed it all season long. And, obviously you cap off the season with the win over Ohio State, which we've talked about recently enough. We don't need to get into that too much. But defensively, I mentioned the injuries and stuff. This stretch, this second half of the season, they only gave up, not including the bowl game, the defense was giving up 19 points per game, which is usually good enough to get you wins in the SEC, especially with the offense that's above average like they were this year. And Johnny Walker stepped up. Christian Williams stepped up all season. He's just solid on the interior.
Yeah.
And I felt like with Rakestraw going down, guys were stepping up left and right on the defense. Yeah. And that's like finally seeing it all come to fruition, what Coach Drink has been talking about with recruiting and bringing in transfers, talking about competitive depth and all that stuff. We saw it happen.
Yeah. Obviously this defense is going to be under a new coach, but I think that's something that we'll probably talk about all offseason is how the best players of this defense were not available in the second half of the season or, some of these games at the end of the season, and it didn't really feel like we missed a step. Yeah. And so, we might have a new scheme. We're going to have a new coach, but I really do have faith in the guys that are still here to really maintain the defense, or at least good enough to have a special season again, potentially.
Missouri,
we'll have some time to talk about that, though.
That is true. Maybe someday we'll know who's going to be leading that defense as far as the coach goes. 11-2, 6-2 in SEC play. First double-digit win season since 2014. Also first bowl win since 2014. Just the seventh double-digit win season all time. And this was just an interesting little fact I found. The first 10-win season for Missouri football came in 1960.
Wow.
And I believe they only played 10 or 11 games. It's hard to compare because they didn't always play a 12-game regular season. Looks like that started in like 1977. So when they started playing 12 games in a regular season, the most Missouri had won, they won 8 games twice in the 80s. They won 8 games in 1998. And then under Gary Pinkel, they win 8 games in 2003, 8 games in 2006, then 12 and 10 with Chase Daniel in 07-08, then 12 and 11, 13-14, and now 11 and 2 in 2023.
Yeah, historically
This is-
good.
Yeah.
And I mean, kind of random, but it definitely doesn't feel good now. But 2023 was a really good year, really, for basketball and football. I mean,
Yeah.
First tournament win in over a decade in basketball earlier this year. Great football season in 2023, historically good. So, 2023 was pretty good to us.
Yeah, and so maybe, I can't necessarily blame all the fans who are, maybe a little bit over the top in their reaction to this basketball season because everything had been going really well for a while there. And this was kind of a pretty big drop back down to earth, but it's only temporary. And we have all football offseason to relish in this, historic Missouri Tiger team.
Do you like relish on a hot dog?
No, I like to relish in good moments, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
No, I'm just a ketchup hot dog person.
That's fine.
I like a chili dog. Put some chili and cheese on a hot dog.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I take that over relish every time.
Okay.
I could get into it if it was like deluxe, though. Maybe it's got to have a lot of stuff on it. Yeah, I'm going to need
It's
ketchup.
just one of the many things.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to need ketchup and mustard and a little bit of relish and some onions on top. Maybe a little hot sauce.
So you're either like ketchup or just everything.
Well, I've
And
never
nothing in-
actually tried the everything.
Okay.
So that's the only way I could get myself to do it, though. 11 and 2. Anything else about this special season? Coach Drinkwitz just loving his players, loving his staff, and this is what happens. It's that simple. Any final thoughts?
Not really. I mean, we covered it pretty well.
Yeah.
I hope that we can replicate it or something close to it next year.
How about the game we go to in person next year? They win.
I'm good with that.
They win 11 games, but lose the one we go to.
Of course.
Yeah. All right. Anything else for the folks?
I think that's it. We'll have to do a Patreon episode just on hot dogs.
Maybe so.
I know you could talk about hot dogs.
Have all the hot dogs lined up. Like first one, no condiments whatsoever.
Like blind taste test.
Yeah, first one, not even a bun. So I'm not above.
Just a naked dog.
Yeah, I'll eat a naked dog.
Absolutely.
Right out of the microwave.
Absolutely.
If we go from a naked dog all the way to like the
everything.
monstrosity. Yes. All right. Special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above. Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan D. Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker, Daddy JD, Tim Keynes, Tyler Harsel, Brandon Garofalo, Brandon Hanks, Matthew Tilley, Luis Hernandez, and Joshua Jacobson. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We love you. And you can find this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcast or on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod. And you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone. We love you as much as Coach Drink loves Blake Baker. We'll see you next week.
That's unconditional love.
Exactly.